Hey guys, for those of you that watch my stuff over on the Wandering In main channel, uh, this is gonna be a weird first video for the extras. I have some content I'm planning in the future, but I saw this and I wanted to make a video on it, and so I'm putting this on the extras channel because it doesn't really belong on the main channel, and I want to talk about this, but also it's not that big a deal. So someone in the Discord shared this with me, and we watched it, not expecting anything like massive, or it's not really massive, but we weren't really expecting anything out of it, just like something fun to watch. And as I went through it, I got a bit more and more frustrated. This is XP to level 3, whose videos I have seen before, a fair few times. Uh, Mostly I've seen them in passing, as in, like, you're scrolling and you see something and you're, oh, yeah, that guy. Um, Essentially, I watched this video and I had issues with it. I'm going to try and be as fair as possible. Um, so I'm going to start the video by basically saying, like, the only reason I want to make this video is because I don't like the takes that are here, given the context. And I feel that they're, pretty unfair and fairly biased based on like a based on like your own personal experiences, kind of reading into the situation and being very disingenuous as to what is actually being said. The only real reason I'm going to pull up on a few of these is because the context was completely misrepresented in a very like unfair way. What I will say is, there's a couple of moments in the video where he says that he thinks this may be a troll post, which is maybe why he isn't taking it as seriously, or why he's kind of talking about something differently. Also, there are instances of this where I agree with him, or where I disagree with the things that are being said in this post here that he's kind of analyzing. And he does say things that I do agree with as well, like communication is important as a GM or a DM. So I kind of wanted to throw that out because I don't want to be like laying into someone I don't know for, just kind of like yeah, just laying into them and being like, this is all terrible, this is all etc. The problem is that, like, I could maybe make an assumption that this was just a jokey post where he's just, kind of like ranting and rambling about other things that have nothing to do with it and using this as like a framework, or it could just be a troll or whatever. It doesn't seem like it, so the fact that there's a few kind of like, I think there's a couple of, I would assume they would be hyperbolic, but there's a couple of things said where it's like, he's he's like, I think he calls the guy. I don't want to put words in his mouth, so I'll highlight it when we get there. But I'll say at the start of this, as I remember, there's a couple saying like this guy shouldn't be allowed in a room with anyone to like GM or DM, and like calling him toxic and etc., which I think is very unfair given the context of what he actually gets through. Now, to note, he doesn't get through all of the rules. From what I can tell, I can actually pull it up here, I think. There we go. DM laid out 44 rules for D&D. It was deleted, which I think essentially highlights the fact that it probably wasn't a troll post. But that doesn't really change anything. If he thought it was a troll post, he probably wouldn't take it seriously. But I don't know. What we're essentially going to do, this will be a fairly long video just because this video is like 24 minutes and I want to put paid to as much of his comments as I can. I don't really want to be like cutting out context or anything like that. So we're going to run through the video. I'll pause, I'll talk about it as much as I can and basically explain why I have an issue. It gets a bit worse as it goes on. I feel like I feel like the context gets even more explicit. Like this, it starts quite bad, and I can kind of agree with him to begin with. As it goes on, it's like the more context you get, the more he doubles down on the original position of like, this guy's horrible. So we'll go through it. We'll see what we can glean from it, and I think we can get some really good points out about like private tables and, you know, GMing private for friends, GMing private for groups you don't really know, like communication, things like that. So I'll let him start off, and we'll pause in a little bit as we get into like the rules and stuff. He's gonna explain stuff.
If you call me or my roles unfair, I'll get up and go home. And if you gotta ride with me, you can find your own way back and suck it up. This is so funny. This video is sponsored by MeUndies. You know,
I should let him do his, seeing as I'm using his video, I should let him do his sponsorship.
Others don't fit quite the same, they're all different. But that couldn't be further from the truth when it comes to MeUndies. I love MeUndies. When I'm getting ready and put these guys on, I'm just having a better day. I've got a few pairs of MeUndies now, and I can't lie, they're my favorite, and I wish I had more. They're so comfortable. MeUndies has any.
I know nothing about MeUndies,
from all black classics,
so I can't really comment on this.
Plus, they come in sizes XS to 4XL.
Go support him if you like his stuff, basically.
For every body.
Same as with any creator.
Also has versatile loungewear. Explore the lounge collection featuring joggers, hoodies, onesies, and more. Plus, they use sustainably sourced materials and work with partners that care for their workers. When it comes to comfort,
I have no fashion sense. All I can say is I don't like much of this, but that's probably just me. So
MeUndies has you covered. Get 20% off your first order plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/fireball. That's 20% off your first order plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/fireball. So I've been seeing this post make its way through the rounds on social media. I've seen lots of people give their takes, and while I haven't cared too much to read them because I saw this post and saw that it was from Reddit and immediately knew it was terrible, but I noticed that this was getting like.
So you saw that it was from Reddit and you knew that it was terrible. You're going in with an immediate bias, but not necessarily a bad bias. You're just biased in that the post itself is going to be terrible. One of the things I didn't say that I wanted to say is it's worth noting that that essentially I don't have a problem with essentially going through it and making fun of it. Like, that's perfectly fine. It was more the kind of like reading deeper and misrepresenting things that I had an issue with. It felt, I mean, I've gone through it, but you'll see what I mean.
Like a lot of popularity and traction, and I wanted to know why, so I thought it would be fun to read it here. That's why I'm doing this. I'm doing this so that we can all learn together, and I can read this and we can go over it, and it's obviously important, and I'm definitely not jumping on a bandwagon. So the original post.
Okay, so I want to take that in the context presented with, essentially saying I'm jumping on the bandwagon, I'm just going to talk about it. Fair play. So it probably isn't that important, and it probably isn't an opportunity to learn, but I still will take it seriously, because it isn't really presented in a jokey way. Maybe I just don't get it, but yeah.
This was deleted, but I found a YouTube video that...
The post was deleted as well.
Has one of those terrible voice to AI things, and I'm gonna just read through that one, so I'm just gonna have to skip through it, but I have the original first 16. Okay, so the post says, my DM just posted this after a hiatus, enjoy. I'll just put you out now that's going to change before anyone goes through with anything. I'm timing turns. I don't give a f it's unfair in your opinion, because your spells are hard, or you don't know what square to move to. You get 1 minute to know all the actions you want to take, or I skip your turn. Alright, I can already hear people in Reddit being like, yo, this one's actually based. Actually, I'm going to implement some of these rules already. Timing somebody's turn does not make them want to decide faster, it just makes them stressed out and not want to play. Imagine you're sitting at the table and you have just leveled up and you have some new spells, but you want to experiment with them a little bit because they may have different effects in the game that you're unaware of how the DM wants to interact with them. Like a lightning bolt. This is a pretty easy spell to get out pretty quickly because you just have a dex save and you deal damage, but you also need to find out the line that you want to draw it in. So you've got to figure out where the line is and what counts as a line line, and if this DM is using squares, what if you want to use a diagonal? That's going to take a little bit of cooperation here, and if you don't want to bog down the DM, you might just do it on your own. Now, sure, you can do this on other people's turns, but if you're like the third turn and you've only had less than 2 minutes to figure this out, you might need a little bit more time to figure out what to do. Otherwise, if I was timed in that scenario, I would just say, I cast a spell and let the DM deal with it. This doesn't help your players' turns be faster. This puts way more pressure on you as a DM to decide and figure everything out. So now you've just taken all the workload that your players could be doing for you on their turns and given it to yourself. I'm also using an easy spell. There are spells like Eye Bite or Command. God, all of the charm spells have so many contingencies with them, like Suggestion. Most of the time, I've realized that my players are taking a long turn because they want to figure out how something works. And if you want to expedite that, you just need to be patient and let them have some time to figure some things out. It's not a video game. It's Dungeons and Dragons. It's all about communication. The whole point of the game being fun is that you can do whatever you want and you're supposed to talk about the rules in the first place. Anyways, I'm going too deep into the first one. There's 44 of these! If you want...
So, the reason I let him go all the way through that without any interruptions or interrupting him or anything along those lines is because I wanted to essentially get a baseline for the first interaction, you know, between the rules and his commentary. The commentary is quite serious. Like he said, he went pretty deep, and I respect that. I don't personally know much about D&D. It's one of the games I just don't enjoy that much. I'm taking this from a kind of like TTRPG, RP kind of like approach. I think there's some of these I just won't agree with in my own personal thing, but one of the things he said that's the most important thing to say is everything is about communication. So the number one rule, and I'm going to do a few videos about how I GM and how I kind of approach GMing and my thoughts on GMing, all these kind of things. Like maybe guidelines, maybe help if you're starting and you want like a very baseline to figure out where you need to come from. The issues that I have is that the framing of this is my DM just posted this after a hiatus. Enjoy. I'll put this out here now. I basically saying stuff's gonna change before anyone goes through with anything. That, to me at least, approaching this makes it sound like something's gone wrong. There's been a hiatus. Maybe the DM wants to come back because he loves DMing. I'm not sure about that, having watched this video already. I have watched this video already, by the way, so I've seen all the way through it. It frustrated me in a lot of ways, but still. I would guess that they wanted to try and make it work collectively, and he was just fucking done. Like, it seems like he was done with the whole thing. So, take that as like a little bit of context going forward. But essentially, the first rule I have issues with. I think it's rough in kind of like a flat put out their way to time turns, to rush people, etc. And him saying, I don't care if it's unfair in your opinion because spells are hard or you don't know what square to move to. You get 1 minute to know all the actions you want to take, or I skip your turn. Now, there are instances where I think this could occur. I'd still say it's not a good look when you're DMing. If you're wanting to DM seriously, like give people time, etc., etc. I'd say the only instance that this would be kind of acceptable is if your players are messing about, they're not paying attention during everyone else's turn, they're not concentrating on the game, they're off doing other things. As a sidebar, contextually, it sounds like that's what the players were doing. And when it came time to have their turns, they'd take ages on their turn because they hadn't planned anything, they didn't know what was happening. In a very, like, mechanical, rules, kind of, like, crunchy game, like any TTRPG game that's got lots of rules, lots of combat mechanics and things like that, it really is worth, like, kind of paying attention in a combat, in an encounter, so you can be ready to go, so everyone isn't waiting around for ages. Not a great way to answer this, but as you'll see, I'm pretty sure the DM just doesn't want to come back. I have a feeling this is either a passive aggressive like manifesto to basically shout at his players without shouting at his players, or it is a no-win set of terms so that he can come back, they'll immediately break the rules, and he can leave with no guilt. And next time they try and ask him to DM for them, then he'll be like, "No, you broke the rules." However, it's essentially that's me reading into it a little bit. That's my guess. I'm not sure at all. It could just be like they're all assholes. The DM could be an asshole, although it seems. Well, actually, the DM could be an asshole, but they could also be assholes. It could just be a terrible group, and they all need to split off and find new people to play with. The best thing to do sometimes in a group is if it's just broken, there's really no way to fix it sometimes. Like, everyone is frustrated with each other. Even a little thing will make things dramatic and arguing and etc. Sometimes you need to start off with like a lot of communication. But anyway, number 2, carry on.
Harder fights, bring a second character sheet and expect to twiddle your thumbs when you die. I'm not going to baby anyone. What? I don't get this one. If you want harder fights, bring a second character sheet. Is the DM saying, bring another character sheet so that you can have a backup character? But that...
So the GM, from what I can tell, the GM is saying basically they're asking for harder fights, and he has been saying if there are harder fights, you might die. I'm not just going to throw in another random character. And this is the entirety of the post. Like, the GM saying, I'm not going to throw in another random character for you so you can join the battle immediately. And if you want a here we go.
Turn because they want to
There
figure...
we go. Sometimes my shit crashes. So he's essentially saying, like, if you want harder fights, the fights are going to last longer because they're harder, because they're longer engagements and etc. If you die partway through the fight, then you're not going to be able to rejoin. And also you're going to need to create a new character. There's a possibility, and I'm not sure of this, so this isn't really a cogent point, but there's a possibility that they'd be turning up with one character, they die, and then they take ages to make a new character. And that meant everyone had to wait after the fight, etc. Or just refuse to make a new character. I don't know. Like in the situation. There's more context to this later, which I think explains why he wanted people to bring a second character sheet in. We don't really get to that, but we don't get to that in this kind of conversation in the video. But essentially, I would say if you die in the fight may take a while. You'll have to expect to twiddle your thumbs to until the fight is over, and there's a point where he can like bring the new character in terms of like roleplay or whatever. That would be my guess, but it definitely doesn't mean whatever this ends up being.
Have so many contingencies with them,
sorry,
like
we've gone a
suggest that you can do whatever you want and you're supposed to talk about the rules. Get this one. If you want harder fights, bring a second character sheet. Is the DM saying, bring another character sheet so that you can have a backup character?
Yes.
I don't think that's what they're saying, because in the last half, it says, and expect to twiddle your thumbs when you die. I'm not going to baby anyone. I have to assume they mean, bring a second character sheet and expect to twiddle your thumbs when you die. I'm not babying anybody because my fights are going to be very hard. So, if you die, I'm not babying you. Bring another sheet. See, this is how you can tell.
You can take the context from if you want harder fights implies that they asked for harder fights, and therefore he's saying the fight. As I said, this is understandable. The phrasing of it was a little bit off, so it's understandable to get the wrong context. But you'll see as we go on, like, it keeps happening.
Tell this was written in a rage. I
Yes.
don't understand this
It
one.
very
I can't tell
probably
if
was.
the GM is upset that they want their game to be hard or easy. You know what? I'm writing this one off as I don't get it. But the one part that I do get is twiddle your thumbs when you die. Nobody should be sitting at the table twiddling their thumbs unless they're just like not in the scene. If you call me...
Which, if they died, they wouldn't be in the scene if it's a longer combat fight. Again, that's not too bad, but it's just a little bit...
or my role's unfair, I'll get up and go home. And if you got a ride with me, you can find your own way back and suck it up. This is so funny. Just imagine him being like, oh, that sucks. And like, he leaves. It would be funny if it was the guy who got a ride with him. Like, he's just like, oh, that's unfair. You can't go home now. I don't think.
So here's the point where it goes off the tracks. Again, contextually, it sounds like he's saying if you dispute my roles and you complain and argue with my roles, then we're going to have a problem. I'm just going to leave. I can't be asked to argue with you for ages. Like, that makes the most sense in context. This take of, like, if you roll and you roll badly, or the GM rolls and he rolls well and kind of, like, defeats you or whatever, like gets a hit on your character, and you say, oh, that's unfair, or oh, that sucks, something along those lines, to immediately assume that that's going to be the bar. I think it sounds more like an extended argument. It has been the problem, and he's basically like, I'm not going to argue about this anymore. I am the DM. Like, you can't keep arguing with me. It gets us nowhere. That would be my guess, but and my guess is from the context of what has come before and what comes afterwards as well, but we don't really look backwards on any of this, so, well, we do kind of, but in a really weird, like, lens.
I think I need to explain why that one's terrible.
That one is terrible, in terms of, like, in a general D&D game, if you have, but I would say with the context of if players are arguing continuously, any DM or GM is going to get annoyed with constantly being called into question. And we'll keep going. We'll see that this is a bit of a trend that implies it probably is an ongoing thing.
It not liking your roles being called unfair. That is kind of annoying.
Yeah.
I think this is an extreme reaction. I don't think you should leave. This guy does not want to run D&D. I can understand thinking that a role, like calling a DM's role unfair, can be annoying. I have been in that scenario before where it's like, it's the dice, like I'm ruling by the dice here. I'm sorry that you think that's unfair. And if this is something you want to talk about after game that you think sucks, I'm more than willing to talk about it with you and find out why it sucks. But that course of action was not taken here. I don't know, if you have a problem with like how DM rules something or how it rolls, just talk to them. Number 4, I'm going to take your character's loot away as regularly as you want it given out. Rule 3 will apply here? Oh, okay, so now we're using Rule 3 as a global rule to all the other rules. Also, if you call any decision I make unfair, I'm leaving. If you criticize me in any way...
Again, like, it's not any decision I make unfair. He's basically... my guess, again, from the context, would be like, if you keep asking for loot, if you keep asking for stuff, then I will also take it away. Just purely because either A, it gets annoying, or they get OP. Like, if they're asking, going back to a previous context, if they're continually asking for harder fights, but they're also demanding they get amazing loot and really cool gear so they can kind of like be overpowered and showing off, like, one of the answers to that is just don't get that gear. It'll still be hard, it'll still be fun and tactical. It's nice to get that good loot, to get the stats up and all that kind of thing, but it also does mean you start to get more and more powerful, and fights are harder and harder to make complicated or difficult. But I'm carrying on for here.
Or think that any part of the game is not fun, I am going to leave! This person does not want to DM. Please free them. Get a new DM. So you'll go through a dungeon, and you'll fight some monsters, and you'll get some loot, and then you'll go back to the town, and then somebody will steal the loot from you, and then you'll go back out and get more loot, and then somebody will steal it again. Like, what is the process here? All right, because you guys got a lot of loot, in the next dungeon, there's 20 rust monsters, and all your armor is going to be useless. But then you'll get magic armor, but then I'm gonna have somebody disenchant your armor. This doesn't make any sense. How are you...
It's essentially, I can see why this guy is a GM or a DM, like, good imagination and everything. The whole context there, I'm not going to comment too much on. It's kind of misrepresentative, although I can understand how he got there. But yeah, it's a very, like, tangential, and I would assume, especially in this one individual, in this main, like, instance here, is more for comedic effect based on what he thinks is happening. but the translation is pretty not terrible so far, but it's not great.
Going to steal player loot. I'm just imagining that like the DM just has like these little rat people that come in and just go through the backpacks of the players and steal their stuff constantly. And they're like, it's only fair. I gave it to you. I can take it away. And if you call this unfair, I'm going to leave. Number 5, if you don't...
Speaking on the going to leave thing, because it does come up a few times as well, actually, I would assume that is essentially again, contextually, it sounds like the GM or DM is like, I am sick of these things. I'm not going to argue about them anymore. So if you continue to do these things like call my roles or me unfair, I am just going to go home. And it's more of a answer as opposed to what would probably, I'm guessing, be a lot of arguing and disagreeing and like no fun at the table. I agree with XP to level 3's take of like get a new DM, and for the DM I think get a new set of players, but and like communicate with each other this time, like let each other know what you want, what kind of game you want, etc. But yeah, the rest of it is a little left field.
Don't act out any of your persuasion or intimidation. I hate this one. No. If you don't act out any of your persuasion or intimidation or any other social checks, you fail before you even roll. You fail immediately because you aren't even trying and you're making the game lame for everyone else. Yeah, actually, what's way better in D&D is when you sit at the table and you corner them in an argument and you make your player sit there and go, I don't know what to say. My character has a 20 charisma. I don't. And the DM's like, I have beaten you logically. Now, I'm not saying that...
So, in this bit, he's kind of representing a scenario where the DM is like, no, before you even roll, you must challenge me to a logic off, and I can beat you logically, so, haha, you don't even get to roll, because I beat you already. I don't really... this one's a difficult one. I feel like it might be right on the way it's presented here, but I couldn't do the same where I can go, like, essentially, imagine a DM who, like, the players walk into a throne room or something, and he does this like long soliloquy, like speech for one of the NPCs for a really important plot point, and one of the players says, "I roll persuasion to change his mind," and he's like, "Oh, okay." It's like, can you kind of like give me a bit of like, can you kind of like give me a bit of how that would sound, like what, or just give me a rejoinder or something? He's like, no, I just need to roll the dice, gets a nat 20, automatically, like automatically cancels out the thing. And then he's like, well, shit, that effort, that role play and stuff was just cancelled by, and maybe some of the other players aren't having fun with that either. They want to like role play out the scene or something. I would say that, for this one, I do agree with him that it's a fucked up rule, but I don't know whether necessarily that isn't contextually because of all the other stuff, basically being frustrated with it. And I think it's a bit of a wild take to kind of like jump into the situation and just assume he's being an asshole and like insisting people have fun his way or something. I mean, if it is, like, yeah, don't do that, but I'm not
as
sure.
like a player or a DM, you can't be like, hey, this is something you can't persuasion check yourself out of. I do that all the time. I'm like, sometimes characters are stubborn, or sometimes I don't really want the outcome that comes with like persuading somebody out of something. And sometimes there's like hard lines for that. Like, you couldn't persuade somebody out of trauma. Like,
And a little bit extra context or something, like how, in this instance, how would you feel if your players complained that you were unfair and argued for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, possibly, or even like 5 minutes or anything, like when you do things like that? Like, I 100% agree with the setting and everything, but like you can slowly get context through this, and it just feels like it wasn't even attempted. It felt like there's a bias coming in, and every time it's like the worst possible take against the DM. We'll do a bit more, and I'll speak on that a bit more as we go.
Sure, we can be funny and call that therapy, but like a player character can't do that to like an NPC that would be important to the game, right? But like if it's something menial, like you're using an intimidation check to try to scare somebody, this DM is expecting the player to get up and threaten them. Like, bro.
You don't have that context, but it might be true. You just don't have that context to say it so definitively.
Oh, we're playing a game. We're not Dimension 20. Why would you hold your players to that standard? If you actually think that your players, I know that there are people who think this too, so this is just big PSA. Do not make your players role play out their persuasion checks if they don't want to. There are some players like myself who like to do that, and then sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I think my character would say something kind of inspiring in order to get these kobolds to go jump at a volcano. Like, it doesn't have to be that deep. We're playing a role-playing game in the first place. Do you now want me to stand up and actually hit you with the sword? 6, if you don't pick up...
I'm gonna skip back a second there. Sorry for that pause on you, mate. That doesn't look great. You know what, actually, I'll just, there you go, much better. So yeah, I agree and disagree. If someone doesn't want to roleplay, don't make them roleplay, especially in a private game. It is a private game. Everyone's there to have fun. But it begins earlier where you have the conversation, like, what do you want, what do you not want? And if you get to the point as a DM where your player says, like, oh, I can't think of anything or anything like that, you say, like, okay, well, do you want to give it a go? Like, we can maybe figure it out, like, cooperatively, you know, anything along those lines. Don't force them to, but offer them the option. They may be able to learn, they may enjoy it, and if they really don't want to, then just say, yeah, no, fair enough, and then later on you can talk about it, like, get the rest of the group, like, what do you want to do in those situations? Is everyone happy? It's never going to be perfect, but with communication, you can work it out. But I disagree with the part where he says, don't make people do that, in the sense of, like, never encourage them. That's reading into him. No, that's not right. I apologize. Like, I disagree with the bit saying, you know, like flat out kind of like, no, this is bad. The rest of it I agree with.
In order to get these kobolds to go jump at a volcano. Like, it doesn't have to be that deep. We're playing a role-playing game in the first place. Do you now want me to stand up and...
Oh, also as a sidebar, this isn't really like a terrible point or anything. It's just the fact it annoys me a little bit that he says we're playing a role-play game. Why are you making people roleplay? I think the answer's in the question. That's just a shitty little technicality, but fuck it.
And actually hit you with the sword. 6, if you don't pick up cues for side quests, that's not my problem. Get over yourself. It's not a video game. So you don't want anybody to play what you...
What's the rest of the context there? Get over it. Get over yourself. It's not a video game. It's a role-playing pen and paper based game with miniatures. I'm not holding your hand if you choose not to pursue stuff.
It's not a video game. So you don't want anybody to play what you have created.
He didn't say that. And again, this is where we start getting into more and more of this bias where he's just, I'm not sure he's, like, contextually, I'll go back a second, so, if you don't pick up cues for side quests, that's not my problem. He's essentially saying, if I give you cues and you don't pick them up, the side stuff, the extra stories, the random things you can find, like the cool little extra stuff I have planned, like, if I would essentially say, as a sidebar, like in this one as well, there are bits where I do agree, but I would say in general, like, representing it is like, if you don't play my game, I'm not gonna, like, hold your hand and make you play my game, or I'm just gonna take my toys and pack up or whatever. Like, it sounds much more like they're not picking up on the cues and then complaining that they didn't find these cool things if he mentions them later, or if he said he had these things planned. I would say, if you, as a GM or DM, if you do want players to, like, pick up on your hard work and go and do things, if they're not picking up on your cues, talk to them about it. Again, it's always communication. It always comes back to that. If you get frustrated and stop doing it, that is also your fault. The way it is presented here isn't great, but I wanted to throw that in for some context.
Game. So you don't want anybody to play what you have created.
Didn't say that.
Got it. You have written and prepared a game with your very cool NPCs and your combats that are going to be very hard and nobody can complain about it. But then if you don't find the mission or the story and you don't know where to go, that's on you. I'm just going to sit here behind the screen and wait for you to yell at me hard enough until you scare me, and then I decide that the guard will give you the quest.
He also didn't say any of that. Again, the embellishment, I assume, is more of a, like... The embellishment is more of, like, a jokey, kind of skitty, like, scenario. But as it keeps going, it keeps misrepresenting the context of everything and painting the DM in a very, very bad light, which is one of the big issues I had with this.
I had my own thing onto that. If your players are like, I don't know where to go. Hey, DM, where do you want us to go in this situation? What's the plan here? And you're like, gotta figure it out. You kind of suck. If your friends that you were playing this game with are genuinely confused on what you want them to do, you gotta give them, you gotta show them what to do. You have made this a little bit confusing and they want to play your game. They're going.
But I would say, also assuming that they've made it confusing is very biased on the side of the players. It's possible that the players are being dumbasses and aren't picking up on the cues. Maybe the cues are really obvious. Or maybe there's other context, like, for example, they might be super high or super drunk, or both. And we'll come back to that later. But obviously that's not the immediate thing you're going to go to. What I will say is, if you talk to all your players as the GM at the beginning, and they say, and you all decide to play like a more sandboxy open world, you kind of pick and choose where you go, and the GM will have things around but not necessarily point you towards them, then that's perfectly fine. Don't take the context that that isn't okay. It's only in situations where your players want to do a thing and you want your players to do a thing, but they just can't figure it out. At that point, you start communicating. It may break the fourth wall a little bit. It may break immersion a little bit, but it's better than the alternative of everyone getting passive-aggressive and annoyed.
Going out of their way to want to play. You should want them to go on the path in order to the adventure that you created, that you literally wrote. You literally wrote and prepared this game and spent time to create this game for people, and you're like, you gotta figure it out. I'm not saying you can't have mysteries in D&D. You can definitely give out context clues that your players can try to use to figure out what's going on in the narrative, and you can be a little subtle with the direction that you want them to go. But if there's ever a point where they're like, what are we supposed to do? You need to be like, all right, here's where I want you to go. You can also
again, throwing in some context, I don't think at any point he said, like, the main storyline, the main quest line. He was talking about side stuff. So this whole kind of, like, narrative of basically being, like just cutting off the entirety of your story, that doesn't seem to be the context. I'm not sure. I'm guessing that kind of, like, developed as he was talking about it, and he didn't go back to read it or to regain context. So I'm guessing that's why this is here. I'm not going to be too, like you know, down on it, because essentially I can kind of see how he got there, like, following the difference in what was said and how he kind of took it. But yeah, I still don't like the misrepresentation of the context.
Make it happen in game. Have, like, a character come up and help them or something. Jesus Christ. If you move to a square in combat, there's no takebacks. Oh, now we're playing chess. Okay. Bro does not want this to be a video game, but then every other rule makes this a video game. That's when Baldur's Gate 3, when you move, you can't move back. It's like the one part of why a pen and paper role-playing game is awesome, because you can be like, I'm going to do this. Oh, wait. Hey, DM, I realize that I'm stupid and I don't want to do that. And the fact that your DM is going to be like, no! That's crazy, man.
Let me do the same thing I've been doing, which is essentially, like, I can understand the perspective here, but contextually, well, no, in this instance, like, it's very vague. My assumption would be that it makes a lot more sense to the players, and my guess would be the reason for this rule, and the reason for the frustration would be something more along the lines of, and we'll get more context to this, and I'm gonna make a note here, because I do realize, like, he doesn't go back over everything to gain more context as he gets more context going forward. So essentially, like, this bit here, I can understand the misunderstanding, or even just, like, the context he takes from it, because it's fairly without context. My guess would be, given I know all of the context, and honestly, as I was watching it, this was my initial thought anyway, was that if you have a player who like moves and then is like, oh no, I don't want to do that, and moves back, I would guess nearly every single GM would be perfectly fine with that. However, if a GM moves and then maybe a couple of other players take their turn, and then the GM goes, okay, so since you moved there, this giant dragon's going to move here and hit you, and the player goes, oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't want to do that. I'm going to take my turn back, or can I take my turn back, and then start arguing, things like that. Like, once you realize the move you've made is bad repeatedly, because you're not concentrating, or just because you make a mistake. Like, if you make a mistake, I think it's fairly fine. If it happens on a regular basis, it implies you're not concentrating. And if you keep like taking back moves and stuff after stuff has gone around, it falls deeper and deeper into that feeling of cheating. Even if it's not necessarily is. If you're in a fairly like argumentative, combative like table, though these type of things can become sticking points, and that's why you need to communicate and say. But again, like it feels it's just a little bit off to assume that the DM is like sitting there saying the second you move, no takesy backsies. It kind of like the worst possible perspective, assuming that the DM is like this horrible like combative DM who just wants to punish his players and is being an asshole. Like, I don't know why that's always the context, but I guess he just came into it with that kind of impression.
My dude. Number 8, you tell every single person what you're doing before you do it. You don't roll dice and then say you're casting fireball. You tell us all. Well, first of all, you don't roll dice to cast fireball. You don't even have to roll dice.
I don't know if that's true.
You have to roll the dice. You have to roll the dice, but you know what? I actually kind of get this one. This one is I know, hear me out. I feel like this one is a little understandable. I also get a little annoyed when I'm DMing and my player is like, make a charisma save. And I'm like, what are you doing? just surprise the DM.
So, I do agree with him, because I do also agree with this. Again, the context is missed. I feel like one of the things that's been passing through my head as I make this video is, like, I mean, no one's gonna watch this. I'm perfectly fine with that. I just wanted to do it for my own sense of, like, like getting this out there, and some of my viewers will possibly find some interesting like takes and stuff, and some context. Is I like if XP to level 3, the channel owner of XP to level 3, came and watched this video, I could just see him being like, dude, you say context way too fucking much, but I'm gonna keep doing it. I apologize, because context is important in this instance, so it's just gonna be a thing I keep saying. He did miss the context of this, which is essentially the way it's phrased makes it sound like they are rolling dice and then saying, like, after the dice have been rolled, then saying what they are doing. So the context he said was like essentially, oh, DM, can you roll a dice, please? Roll like charisma save, and the DM is like, what for? And they're like, I'm not telling you yet. I understand that can be frustrating. 100% agree. What is being presented here is much more like, oh, I rolled a nat 20. Okay, that was to hit the bad guy, as opposed to like, oh, I rolled and it's a 2. I was rolling a spot check to see like what's happening around me, which is inconsequential. If you want to hit, it feels a bit like cheating. Again, it's like diving into that like vague pool of like maybe cheating. I think that appears to be what the rule is for. Like reading it, and yeah, but
I have a lot of implicit trust that I give to my players and my friends to where that doesn't become a problem. Like, I know that they're not going to like pull one over me. And if there's somebody in your group that you think feels that way about you, you should talk to them and do something about that. I think if you're in combat 100%. And you're doing this, it's not as big of a problem. The one that does kind of bother me is like the guard looks at you and says, hey, nobody is allowed in. And then the player rolls and says persuasion check. Okay, I didn't call for the persuasion check. You can ask. I don't mind if you're like, can I roll persuasion? 99% of the time I'm going to say yes, but it is annoying to be like, I am rolling persuasion now. I am rolling intimidation.
It can be, but it can also be okay.
Control over the narrative.
Communication,
taking
basically.
It away from the DM a little bit, and that can suck. Number 9, I will give out exhaustion more frequently. If you argue, go home. or you can actually fight me over it, or you can DM yourself. Okay, bro wants to LARP so bad. Actually persuade me, actually intimidate me, and then if you have a problem with the way that I rule it, actually fight me. Giving out exhaustion.
I'm not sure where that context came from. I wonder maybe if like, because there's quite a lot of heavy cuts in here, in this video. I wonder if he's like doing other things in between as he's recording, because it feels like he reads it, and then the context he comes out with is a little bit off. Here, like, I give out exhaustion more frequently. If you argue, go home, or you can actually fight me over it, or you can DM me. He's basically saying, you guys keep refusing exhaustion, or, like, I have decided to give out exhaustion more frequently, and you don't like exhaustion. If you argue, you can go home, or you can fight me, or you can DM yourself. Basically an ultimatum. I'm not sure where the context of...
Or you can DM yourself. Okay, bro wants to LARP so bad. Actually persuade me, actually intimidate me, and then if you have a problem with...
Oh, he's talking back to the actually, like, forcing them to roleplay earlier. Okay, I see the context there, yeah.
The way that I rule it, actually fight me. Giving out exhaustion more frequently. The fact that you have to word it like this to your players means that they aren't liking how often you are giving out exhaustion. So you had to make this implicit rule to be like, get over it. I'm going to give this to you. This is how I run my game. Can we talk about this or no? This is just forced upon me? Okay. I don't want to play. Every snide comment you make to an NPC will be remembered and paid back in triplicate. You all seem to believe there is little consequence. So once again, we're playing a video game again. This is a Telltale game, and everybody remembers everything. And
it is fairly true for like real life and just reality in general that people do remember things.
I'm just imagining that somebody says, haha, this guy has a funny name. And then the DM's like, oh, okay, there's 5 players. Okay, 15 guards walk up and they start pointing at you and laughing at all your names. Haha, your name is stupid. Haha, your name is stupid. They're like Michael Scott. Your name sounds stupid and you cast dumb magic. Boom, roasted. Bro, learn how...
So, I'll finish this.
How to take a joke. Everybody's there to have fun. Jeez.
So, bro, learn how to take a joke. Everyone's there to have fun. So, again, God, I'm saying it every time, I know. I'll try not to reference that I'm saying it every time I say it. Every snide comment you make to an NPC will be remembered and paid back in triplicate. Now, the context I take from this is that the GM is basically saying, when you go and meet a king, when you go and meet someone important or someone dangerous, a boss or like a gang leader or something, if your character in character makes snide remarks to them, they will remember it and they will pay it back. Essentially, it sounds like he's been letting that stuff slide, possibly, or he just hasn't been letting it slide and it's been a cause of arguments between the group. Because they seem to believe there's little consequence. The scenario that was given by XP was essentially an out-of-character comment, basically saying, man, that guy has a dumb name, and then him getting butt mad and then punishing them for it, which I don't think you can really take... I mean, you could probably take it contextually, but, like, I'm not sure why that would be the go-to, seeing as it makes a lot more sense the way it's phrased, that it would be in character, and basically, you know, yeah. Which I will say, like, if you're just trying to have a fun game and everything, and this is just the only individual problem a GM has, talk about it. Like, basically say to them, look, I'm trying to take this seriously for the NPCs, for the world. If you make snide comments to someone who's an evil asshole who kills everyone, they're going to try and kill you. I don't want to do that, so we need to figure out a way, like, can you make the comments out of character so I don't have to either ignore it and feel weird about it, etc. Like, there's a lot of ways to fix this, but with all of the rest of the context we get here, I can understand that all of these little things just pile up.
So once again, we're playing a video game again. This is a Telltale game, and everybody remembers everything. And I'm just imagining that somebody says, haha, this guy has a funny name. And then the DM's like, oh, okay, there's 5 players. Okay, 15 guards walk up and they start pointing at you and laughing at all your names. Haha, your name is stupid. Haha, your name is stupid. They're like Michael Scott. Your name sounds stupid and you cast dumb magic. Boom, roasted. Bro, learn how to take a joke. Everybody's there to have fun. Jesus. I'm
gonna say as well, for the essentially, for the purpose of trying to be as fair as possible, I get the feeling from this video that he has had bad experiences with GMs who do similar things, but without as much like validity to it, or as much reason for it. They're just kind of very controlling, very combative, and he's kind of taking those experiences and the bias of those experiences and like projecting them into here, which is why I feel there's a lot of hyperbole in the extremes of the situations to kind of make them as bad as possible. I don't think it's on purpose. I do think if you're going to do a video about a GM who has kind of reached the end, or just like a D&D group who've just gone to shit and are arguing and are having a whole load of problems, and the DM basically says, like, here are my rules or I'm out. I feel it's I'm not going to say insincere. I don't want to be harsh here. I feel it's disingenuous to paint him as this like horrible dude, because he's like, a lot of the stuff he's laying out, again, contextually, it makes a lot of sense. But having said that, the overarching thing you can say here is, instead of all, like, what I will say is this whole list sounds very passive aggressive and sounds very kind of like, I don't actually want to GM for you. I just want to complain about all the issues I've had with you, all the little petty problems that have piled up. And at most, if they're a group of friends who are having a really big like schism or argument or difficulties with this, it's very possible that they're trying to convince him to come back again, and he just doesn't want to. So he lays all this out so that he can come back and keep the friend group. But essentially, the second one of them break it, which it sounds like they'll break it them immediately, he can get up, he can say, I tried, like, wash his hands of it, and, like, not feel like the bad guy. Which, again, it's all, like, such shitty conversation and stuff, but, such lack of communication and stuff, but...
I mean, textbook, nobody's communicating. You will not be given a mega dungeon every session. A temple is not the size of a small city. Neither is a cave. This will happen when it's natural and organic. Go play some roguelike if you want that. Okay, guys, we're not a video game, okay? So you don't know where the side quest is, and you don't know exactly where the dungeon is, and if you go ask somebody where something is and you don't ask the specific right way, I'm not going to let you roll persuasion or intimidation to find out where to go. What this DM wants is for his players to wander around aimlessly, hoping that they find the right way to go.
He didn't say that. He said essentially, it sounds like this GM has a fair amount of sandbox in his game, and it's like stuff you can wander around and find, and like little like mini encounters and things. But it sounds like his players are always expecting it to be the main quest line, and if they wander into like a goblin cave, they get upset that there's just a few goblins in there and the cave isn't very big. So he's basically saying, my guess would be, he's basically saying, like, not every encounter is going to be like that. Stop complaining that all of these places aren't giant and give you a massive adventure. Sometimes they're just going to be small, little side things, you know, like... Because he did say, I'm not sure why that was ignored, but he did say, like, it will happen organically. You'll get there. Like, just have some patience, enjoy the things I give to you, and you'll eventually get there. But...
Fun game.
I will say, like, I don't necessarily want to play with this GM in the current state he is in. It sounds like he puts a fair amount of work into it with all the side stuff and the, you know, the fact that he includes like all these little bits and pieces could be interesting. I mean, there's no way to say for sure, but
travel portion is done. You want to travel continents doing literally whatever you want, whenever you want, go play World of Warcraft or play D&D with ChatGPT. Okay, so everything I just said, never mind. This GM not only wants everybody to wander aimlessly, not know where the plot is, and literally physically roleplay out convincing people to tell them where to go. The irony is that the DM, their friend, is right in front of them being like, convince me. Then if they wander around aimlessly to try to find where to go, the GM's gonna be like, no.
So, again, the presentation of this is a little bit off, because what he mentioned like continents, I believe. Let's go back. When he said, I take it all back, I thought he was going to say, like, actually it sounds like these players are kind of bad, which isn't what happened. That disappointed me a little bit, but it's fine. He said the travel portion is done. You want to travel continents doing literally whatever you want. go play World of Warcraft. He's basically saying like you've been traveling, you've been doing stuff. Stop trying to go anywhere. Like you're ignoring the story or something along those lines. That would be my guess. Again, contextually, the presentation that he's like. Oh wait, let's.
Want,
Oh, well,
go
we're gonna
play
get
World
back
of
to
Warcraft
it.
or play D&D with ChatGPT. People to tell them where to go. The irony is that the DM, their friend, is right in front of them being like, convince me. Then if they wander around aimlessly to try to find where to go, the GM's going to be like, no.
So he didn't mention anything about wandering around aimlessly. And I would assume you can wander around aimlessly and find things. The complaint was like traveling, like going in places where you don't really need to go or there's no reason to go. My guess would be is that the players are getting frustrated about not getting everything and about the conflict, so they're just kind of fucking around or just being like whatever, let's just go here. Again, passive aggressive. And then the DM is getting frustrated by that and trying to like railroad them back to places, and like that's just bad communicate. But this like presentation here is not really how I think. It's a very biased translation at best.
Stop doing that. So basically what this GM wants is his players to just be giga brain smart, pay attention to everything, disregard their player backstories, disregard whatever they want.
When was there any mention of player backstories? That's really diving deep into like something that hasn't been mentioned.
Disregard any build that they want because they're not going to get the magic items that they want. And disregard playing the character they're currently playing because the combats are going to be hard, they're going to be unforgiving. You cannot judge them, otherwise the GM will leave. So you should just have a plethora of characters ready to die at any moment and slam your face into anything that could potentially be the direction to go in the game to just play the game. I don't understand this type of thinking. I don't know what they want. Like, genuinely, I'm trying to psychoanalyze this GM a little bit, and maybe they were just like, they want to run like an open world game or something, but it's very clear that they don't want any of that. They want their players to just be really clever and like figure out the story the second it's like thrown out. I really don't get this. If you're late with no good reason, I'm going to have your character's hit points for the entire session.
God.
That's insane. Do you have
So I'm going to hit it immediately. Yes, that's insane for a regular GM in a regular situation. Like, being late is bad. Try not to be late. It's kind of disrespectful to the players and to the people, the GM who's, like, put work into doing the things. But, like punishing people in the game in general, I would say is very bad. I'd say if you've got to that point, you will need to, like, take a hiatus, take a break, communicate. Like, something's going very wrong. However, the context we're given here is not right.
a real life emergency outside of the game, or you had for the entire session? That's insane.
Okay, so sorry, I'm gonna replay
the
it.
Second it's like thrown out, I really don't get this. If you're late with no good reason, I'm going to have your character's hit points for the entire session. That's insane. Did you have a real life emergency outside of the game, or you had, you were in traffic, or anything else that could have possibly made you late to the...
So, again, I'm going to reiterate the possibility that the reading and the lines were done, like, way apart, because it literally said for any good reason. The last part of it, the halving the character's hit points, that's not going to help anyone, but I don't think he wanted to help anyone. Not important. If you're late without a good reason, if you get there halfway through the session for any good reason, without any good reason, I feel like being stuck in traffic is a good reason, and in general, a DM would be like, yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Like, you can't really help that. Any reason at all, there's lots of reasons. I think does he actually use the word reason after saying that?
Insane. Did you have a real life emergency outside of the game, or you had, you were in traffic, or anything else that could have possibly made you late to this thing?
He didn't say reason.
This is a job now. I'm going to cut your pay.
At no point did he say it was a job. He just said, like, don't turn up late with no reason. Basically, be respectful. I think being respectful is understandable. He didn't say it's a job. Everyone's there to have fun, yes, but also if you're a GM and you put, like, 2 days work into a session, someone shows, and I'm doing the contextualizing here a bit too far, as it's a little bit hyperbolic, but I'll use it for the sake of making a point. If the GM spends 2 solid days preparing a session, you turn up like halfway through the session, so let's say 2 or 3 hours late. You sit down, and the GM goes, "How come you're so late?" And they're like, just I was busy." Like, that's gonna piss you off. That would piss you off, right? I'm assuming.
By not being here on time. That's insanity. To everybody who's on Twitter being like, yeah, you should probably not play with this GM anymore. No, this is not even like a DM anybody should ever be in a room with.
I disagree. Again, given the context, I think we can safely say that so far we can, to a degree at least, understand his problems and the issues that have come up in this game. This is the main reason I wanted to do this video. It feels very... I don't like making a big statement like that. And I would say, especially if you're throwing this video out just for a laugh or just for a bit of content, you could be critical and make a few jokes. You don't have to shit on some random dude and say no one should be in a room with them. I'm not looking to like massively call it out or anything. I'm assuming it was just like, I don't like the word triggered, but you know what I mean. Like I imagine just kind of getting a bit worked up over the scenario, the situation. Maybe remembering back to other GMs who've been really bad and kind of like projecting it onto this guy. But I don't like that take at all.
This is probably a troll post. It feels like a troll post because
It was
it's just
deleted.
so insane.
I don't think it's a troll post.
I can't believe I'm only at 13, but
Like, if it was a troll post, all the people reacting to it would have made the person leave it up for the laughs, because they'd all be reacting to a troll post, taking it seriously. The fact that they deleted it sounds like it was true, it got more traction than they expected, and either maybe people who knew them in real life saw it and like told them to take it down because it was shitty, or they just realized that they had a pretty bad... They wanted a, you know, am I the asshole kind of thing, and everyone to say, no, you're not the asshole. But too many people were like, yeah, you guys sound like you're assholes on this as well, so it's probably everyone's fault.
But this really just feels like a manifesto. This really toxic DM
It does sound like a
wanted their
manifesto.
game to go a very specific exact way,
No,
and then
no.
it didn't happen.
No, it sounds like a very bad table who just can't agree with each other and can't communicate. It doesn't sound like it's the DM's fault any more than anyone else's fault, so far.
So then they took a break and they went, here, you have to do all of these things or I'm not running the game. Which is crazy. They're just mad.
No, not necessarily. I think that's fair. If that is what the DM wants to do and comes back and says, look, guys, this is what I want to do, they have the right to say no. Like, is he taking out all the context, if he was being very serious, if this was a session 1 and he laid out all of these rules, I'd say in general no one would want to do it, and he'd kind of be an asshole, but he can do it if he wants.
If you don't show up for no good reason, oh good, the GM is going to decide whether your reason for not
How do you know that?
showing up was good or not. Did your grandma die? Not good enough.
Also hyperbolic. I would say if your grandma died, there isn't anyone really, aside from the uber assholes, who would say that's not good enough. And again, hyperbolic to... again, I should like dial it down again a little bit. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to kind of like hyperbolize and make a bit of a joke out of it if that's the intent. If you're being serious, which considering you've got fairly angry as this has gone on, it feels serious, so I'm going to take it seriously. It's hyperbolic to make that argument. It's unfair to the guy. Most likely, it's no good reason like I got drunk and passed out. That would be a bad reason.
Half your hit points if you don't show up for no good reason, and that will be determined by me alone if no one else has the guts to say for fear of upsetting one another. This person is 15 years old.
It actually, I don't know for sure, but I would say that it sounds like either a teenage group, possibly, but it could just as easily be some very, either socially awkward or passive, 30-year-olds. basically just as easily. And it sounds like there have been issues with people. Like, again, context. It sounds like uh, basically him saying if no one else has the guts to say for fear of upsetting one another, um, that he doesn't read the rest of this. I assuming it doesn't have much context to it or much importance to it. It sounds like people. It's not just him who's had a problem with it. It sounds like other people have been upset but refused to like call people out or have a problem with it. Again, just a guess. Context. The first time you'll find yourself losing either a whole level or up to 3 major items of your own. Second time you do it in a row, you'll be removed from from the chat, and the group full stop. I have no time for people not to show up. I mean, if you don't show up for no good reason, then again, we're talking in terms of the other people at the table, like respecting their time as well and everything. I can understand it. I would say again, it shouldn't really get that far, but it does sometimes, and that's when things are too broken really to fix. You can probably try, but it may just get more frustrating.
Of upsetting one another. This person is 15 years old. I am also now of the opinion this person has 0 life experience and is not an adult and does not understand the adult world. The first time you'll find yourself losing either a whole level or up to 3 major items of your own. The second time you do it in a row, you'll be removed from the chat and the group full stop. I have no...
Oh, he does read all of it.
Not
okay.
Show up. Why do you
My
not
bad.
have time? You're here to play the game. I am doing you all a favor by running this D&D, so show up or don't, and if you don't, I'm going to make your experience worse. Yeah. The people who eventually do show up to the game, who are there, just make their experience worse so they don't want to ever show up ever again. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just kick them.
What about if they aren't showing up already and it's a regular problem for the games and causes massive problems for the games and for everyone else, including the DM who may have wasted a whole load of time during his week? Like, I don't know. Let's throw out a similar like scenario. Like he works 6 days a week. He has 1 day off. That's when they do the sessions. During the week, he works like 9 to 5 every day. He has a family life, etc., etc. Or he's a teenager and he has to do homework and etc., etc. Like whatever. And he has some time to do this stuff, and he dedicates his free time to like prepping and planning and etc. Then the context is completely flipped, and like it's people who don't show up on a regular basis are assholes. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but like when you present things in a certain way, it presents a perspective. When you present this kind of stuff, you have to look at the context, go as best you can from the context, and try not to be like super biased or like misrepresent things, especially when you're throwing this out to a whole load of people. Because imagine if he is like a 15-year-old. Like some of the things said here are kind of, I wouldn't really want to say that to a 15-year-old DM who's just like not dealing with the situation very well, etc.
Come out of the group. Just kick him out of the group for not showing up. If you get too stoned or drunk to play, I will go home without a warning. Your warning is here. I kind of get this one. I think anybody being under the influence while you're playing D&D is sort of like a group decision. I've known a lot of people who play D&D as a very casual board game, and they'll just start lighting up or start drinking like in the middle of the game, and that can be disrespectful. Like that sucks, and I think this is a little bit much to say that. If
why is it a little bit much to say if you're too stoned or drunk? Like again, the bias here is really bizarre.
Make their experience worse so they don't want to ever show up. This one, I think anybody being get too stoned or drunk.
So the context is, if you get too stoned or drunk to play, I will go home without warning. Your warning is here. Now again, if we're reading this, if we're taking the context from it, it means this has happened on a regular basis and he's got sick of it. Otherwise, why would he include it? Like, what I can say is, like, there's a possibility that he's been in other groups that have done this, but this seems like a friend group. Also, not going back and recontextualizing the 13 or 15-year-old, I doubt, like, it's within the realm of possibility, but I doubt a bunch of 13 or 15-year-olds playing D&D are getting stoned and drunk in general. Like I'm sure there's a possibility, and if you are parents of those kids, like go and deal with them because you shouldn't be letting them do that. But in general, I'm gonna say like probably college or later, university or later, so like 20s, early 20s at minimum, probably a lot older. But yeah.
To play, I will go home without a warning. Your warning is here. I kind of get this one. I think anybody being under the influence while you're playing D&D is sort of like a group decision. I've known a lot of people who play D&D as a very casual board game, and they'll just start lighting up or start drinking like in the middle of the game, and that can be disrespectful. Like, that sucks, and I think this is a little bit much to say that. You know, if this was the only rule, there would be no problem. Somebody starts that and you want to leave, that's totally fine. But it's the fact that it's preceded by 14 other insane rules. 16, if you get up for bong or smoke or whatever breaks every 10 minutes, I will simply pack up and go home. You don't have to say simply. We know you want to go home really badly, dude. We know you barely want to be here. I'm sick of waiting for every bloke to be here at the table. Oh, wait, bloke? He's British? I'm timing turns. I don't give a f*** if it's...
So you know what I've got to say. Hello, I am British. Thank you for the very accurate depiction of a British accent. What I will also say is, again, going back into context, like it doesn't that sound reasonable? If your D&D group is getting up every 10 minutes to go rip a bong or to go have a smoke, and get high, too stoned or too drunk to play, doesn't that sound like a really bad time for a GM who's trying to take things seriously? Like, yes, I would say the GM probably needs to, get up and go home and basically be like, I don't want to play with you guys. I want to take this seriously. I'm going to find a group that does. And they can say, that's fine. Like, fair play. We don't want to take it seriously, so we're just going to have someone GM and just, we're just going to fuck around and not take it seriously. That is all 100% fine communication. And as long as everyone is aware of what's going on and wants the same things or is willing to do the same things to have fun, great. But basically, like, at this point, this is kind of the point where I feel like there's not really an ability, like, looking at all of this to be like, well, looking at all in completeness, the possible, like, cheating and all of these things. It's like, yeah, no, it sounds like this guy has a legitimate issue. And he's just angry and wants to have a go at these guys for fucking around.
I will simply pack up and go home. You don't have to say simply. We know you want to go home really badly, dude. We know you barely want to be here. I'm sick of waiting for every bloke to be here at the table. Oh, wait, bloke?
Oh, I shouldn't have rewound.
British? I'm timing turns. I don't give a f*** if it's unfair in your opinion. Okay, now I have to go to the terrible...
Unfair in your opinion.
...video to find out what the other rules are. Guidance, divination spells, owls, and whatever spells I decide are too f***ing stupid and are banned outright. No more f***ing guidance. Who hurt you? Why did guidance hurt you so bad? Guidance is fine. It's just a D4. Let the players have their guidance. You get one chance at a skill check if you...
I'm going to... I'm going to say I have no commentary on that. I don't think there was much of a problem with his take on it. I don't know D&D, or I don't know what guidance is. I guess it's an extra D4 on a roll, maybe. But I have no context, so we'll ignore that one.
Guidance is fine. It's just a D4. Let the players have their guidance. You get one chance at a skill check. If you f*** up, your party doesn't get their chance to do the same check. Think careful of who's good at what. Okay, there's a little bit of understanding behind this one.
I agree.
Like, every villain is a little understandable, right? This one I kind of get. It is annoying.
I don't agree with villain. I have seen no actual proof that this guy is a villain. A few of the rules I definitely think are way OTT, but I think with the context we've been gathering, it is more the group that is broken rather than the DM being an asshole himself. I think either they're all assholes or individual like, it could be anything. But I don't think it's fair to say that he's a villain.
To be like, can I try? Can I try? When you're already running a game where the players have no idea where to go and you are giving them flat walls that they have to bash their heads through, that they may have to use a skill check in order to understand, bro, you dug the hole. This is the game you want to run. Your players are going to look at your skill checks and be like, this is the only way forward. How else are we supposed...
Why aren't we also looking back at the other like rules and the context of those rules? So the arguing with the DM, the rolling and then saying what you're doing, the missing side quests and things like that. We now have the context that they're getting too high and too drunk, and they're wandering away from the table. The fact that they're like traveling around randomly or trying to go to different continents could make a lot of sense contextually if they're really high and drunk and if they're getting up every 10 minutes and not paying any attention to the game. I feel like this was kind of the point to go back and go like, okay, I've got more context. Clearly, this is something that's going on. Otherwise, why is it here? Like it's way too specific to be like random rules. You know, not getting too high or drunk. I can understand that rule. The rest of the rules are very, very specific, and the one about getting up every 10 minutes is so specific that it can only be having a go at people doing it as opposed to basically saying you're not allowed to. You know, if I was making rules, which wouldn't I wouldn't codify rules like this, but if I did, I wouldn't say like you're not allowed to get up every 10 minutes to go and get food or to go and do this, because I would assume my players wouldn't do that. And if they did, I'd communicate with them and basically say, hey guys, can we concentrate a little bit more, because you're kind of like messing up, like you're not realizing certain things or you're not noticing things. And also if they're getting high and drunk, you basically say the same thing, like, hey guys, you know, I don't mind I don't mind people being a little bit high, you know, just have a little bit of weed or like have a few beers. But if you're like downing cans and like shouting and arguing and screaming and etc., which again, no, we don't have any context that that's actually what's happening. But we've all been with mates who have got high and drunk. That generally tends to be how things go. People get loud, people get obnoxious, especially if you're sober. That can suck. And we have no proof that the DM is sober either. But you know.
Supposed to succeed. Of course they're gonna all want to try to roll to succeed. This is the game you have created. Discussion of metagame details in game will result in instant damage to your character. That's insane.
No.
You are silly. Sometimes people like to make jokes. That's a little.
So, at what point did he say jokes? The context given was having metagame conversations is not allowed. So, what the assumption there would be, at least the assumption I would immediately go to, is that if you have like a player in one house, like fighting a couple of goblins, with another player who's like a priest or a cleric or something, and then you have another player over in a different house who's been knocked down and is like wounded and can't get up, having a conversation basically saying like, oh, you should go and heal them in that other house, in character, you would have no idea about that. If you're having that conversation in character especially, it makes no sense and can be really weird. And even out of character, it's knowledge that your characters don't have. So it's weird if your character suddenly goes, I have to go to that other house. Why? I just have to go there, and then run over and heal and be like, oh my god, and then heal him. Like, I don't think that's terrible, especially in a private game, if you just want to have fun, if you just want to mess around. But if you want to take things more seriously, again, communication, just figure out what you guys want to do, what's the yes, what's the no, what's cool, what's not cool. Figure all that shit out and everything will be fine. But trying to present it, at this point, it feels just fully, I don't want to be too. So I'm gonna ramp it back down again. I feel it's unfair to present it in such a way where it's so critical and hyperbolic, where you're basically saying, whoa, you can't joke about things, like with your mates around a table. It's like, in no way was that stated. And I'll replay it just
to succeed. Of course they're gonna all want to try to roll to succeed. This is the game you have created. Discussion of metagame details in game will result in instant damage to your character. That's insane. You are silly. Sometimes people like to make jokes. That's a little wild. Just ask them to stop. You don't have to deal damage. That's ridiculous. I think these are children. I think these are literally children. They don't understand repercussions.
alcohol and weed gives us enough context to assume that they're not. And assuming that they are makes no sense.
Children, they don't
like saying they might be is possible. Like they might be, but it's not the most likely outcome here.
understand repercussions. Rules luring fellow players is encouraged. Actuallying me will just result in me telling you to fuck off. Oh, okay. I don't think I can go on. This one sucks. At my table, you can rules lawyer me. That's okay. Sometimes it's annoying, but most of the times it's in good faith, and I totally get it. The time that I don't like it is the opposite. Do not rules lawyer other players. That is mean, and that is rude, and you're telling them how to play the game. Oh, regardless of these other rules, if you have a DM that encourages this to begin with, giant red flag, stop, because other players should not be rules lawyering you. That's just rude and kind of disrespectful. You roll your dice within view of two players who aren't you standard. You roll them neatly and you roll them on the table. Failing to do these three things will auto fail whatever roll you did, arguing.
So I'm going to give context to what's being asked here. Essentially, the request here is that you roll your dice in view of other players so everyone can see what your result is, and that you do it like in such a way that it stays on the table and it, you know, like it's, you know, not just like, whoa, I'm guessing. The upcoming take is another one that is very out of pocket. So I just wanted to give context first before we go into it.
That you actually rolled validly when you clearly didn't is an automatic critical fail. So if my dice falls off the table, I critically fail.
Where are you getting that from? It's again it's the same with the reason. Like if you have a reasonable excuse for why you're late or whatever, like you're immediately taking the worst possible explanation. My assumption would be is if your dice roll off the table, like it's probably preferred that it doesn't, but it very, very clearly, this is an attempt to curtail cheating, where someone says they rolled and says what they got, but no one saw it. And he's worried that there's a kind of epidemic of cheating, possibly, or whatever. And then arguing, saying that you know, if he says, like, oh, you didn't roll that, and then saying, yes, I did, and arguing about it, results in a critical fail, basically curtailing the instance whereby it turns into an argument, and etc. It's just a critical fail. Like codify. I understand to a degree, like what these rules are. It's essentially trying to fix all the problems that are a continuous issue at this table. The problem is there's so many of them and they're so bad, like all piled together, that it's better to just walk away. I'm guessing that it's a friend group that's just had these issues and it's become too much for everyone, and you know, it's probably fault all around. I'm not saying that this GM is perfect or anything, but I think we can read this and go like, oh, this sounds like everyone is doing wrong things, and who knows the balance of those scales to completely like throw up the DM as the problem. I can understand how you get there if you just like bulldoze into this and don't pay much attention, but just reading it, like I don't get that take.
I think I've gone full circle. I think I actually do want to play D&D with this person.
So, but this goes on for a little bit. I want to give as much of my thoughts on it before it starts, because I don't really want to pause it and go through it as it goes. I hate this take. This is possibly the worst part about it. And this is the main reason for me doing this video, is because it turns into this kind of like fantasy of like trolling the DM in like a really passive aggressive, non-communicative way that completely takes back all the arguments of communication and all of these things. It treats the DM like this horrible, toxic villain that deserves to be punished with like real passive aggressive like tactics and really like mean stuff that I just don't agree with. And I think it's a really, I would say, to walk myself back a little bit, I would say in context of a jokey, like kind of shitty, just kind of pissing about, like maybe it's all right, but all of these conversations up until now, everything that we've had has been quite serious and talking about like what's good and what's bad and etc. So throwing this on at the end and then a few additional bits that are said, just I have a big problem with it, and this is the main problem. The rest of it, small issues, etc., etc. This is a really bad message.
Just to see how quickly I can piss them off while table I critically fail. I think I've gone full circle. I think I actually do want to play D&D with this person just to see how quickly I can piss them off while trying not to look like I'm trying to piss them off. If I pick up my dice and just drop it on the table in the middle of the game, they're not only going to get mad at me and probably leave because they think I was rolling to do something in the game, like I was casting Fireball, but they're also going to think that I rolled in.
Sorry, I have to give context on this one. So the thing that the rule that was is don't roll something and then say it was something. So don't roll a dice and then you get a good roll and say it was Fireball. Whereas it's being recontextualized here as if I drop a dice, he's going to assume I was rolling for something and then punish me for, it's weird.
I was casting Fireball, but they're also going to think that I rolled incorrectly. So I've like double enraged them just for dropping my dice on the table. And then I'll just say something like, oh no, I was casting Guidance. No, you can't cast Guidance right now. Like, that's not something you can do. And I'll be like, oh, okay. Can my second character do that? And then I will take the fastest turn known to man by also not explaining anything that I'm doing. So I'll do my stuff really fast to get into the 1 minute time limit, but then they'll be like, what? You didn't explain anything you were doing. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I was trying to stay in the time limit. I cast Guidance. Okay, you can't cast Guidance inside of combat. That's ridiculous. What did you do on your turn? I'm like, oh, you want to know the rules of what I did on my turn? Okay, oh, so, wait, no, I'm not allowed to do that. That's discussion of metagame. That's metagame discussion. I can't do that. I don't want you to leave the table. This is insanity. I would then try to gaslight them into being like, well, isn't it a little insane you're not rolling your dice out for everybody else? Like, I think it would only be fair. And then if they were like, no, I am the DM, I get to do my dice rolls behind the DM screen, I'll be like, oh, so it's kind of like a video game then, where like we don't really know what's going on behind the screen. I thought this was more of like a pen and paper style game. I just didn't think you would rule it like that. I mean, I thought that you were a really fair DM. I wouldn't want you to be unfair, right? Like, I'm not calling you that, but I'm like, I just thought you were fair. And then they would be like, okay, fine. And then they would roll it. And then if they ever rolled in the incorrect way, I'd be like, that's a critical fail! A critical fail! Yay! And then if they were like, no, I can't do that, I'd be like, why?
This is almost ending up as like a really like bullying almost. I'm like this last bit where it's like intentionally like flipping the rules and like kind of like just, you know, shouting, and I know it feel, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like the feeling of it, of like this sentiment given at the end here. I just don't like it.
Why? You don't know how to roll correctly? We all know how to roll correctly. We've all been rolling correctly. You don't know how? Our own DM who created these rules doesn't know how to roll at the table! I don't want to read the rest of
Also, as that is the end of the little section there, I would say that if you were to do that, even given this really broken table, if you were to go there and do that to this DM, you would be unequivocally the worst and most toxic person there. A villain, you might say. And no, I will walk that back. I was being hyperbolic. Obviously, he is not being a villain. It's just, don't do that. That's a terrible idea.
these. Instant death traps and mechanics are coming into place. If you call these things unfair moving forward, I will laugh at you and tell you to f off and cry some more. Okay, so this guy does not want to run D&D. This guy wants his friends to walk into rooms and die, and then to laugh at them. That is what the entirety point of this game is. One of the worst D&D games I ever played was when I walked into a room after a couple of sessions of a game. I walked in and immediately died. I did not have a backup character. It was a combat that then started. My character was dead, and I just had to hang out. I stood up and walked around the room and just started doing my own thing because I was dead and there was nothing for me to do. That is one of the worst things you can do as a DM if you're trying to make the game fun, is having an instant death trap, unless you have some cool story thing behind it where, like, there's a way to get...
So I feel like this is the crux of the issue, is something about this GM, DM, and the rules he put forth and everything kind of like tapped into possibly some memory of like bringing up the worst game ever. It feels like this has been kind of some of this stuff has been projected on. I'm assuming that's why the takes have been so arbitrary and don't really make much sense. in terms of like what's presented and then what's like translated and like the translation of what's presented essentially. Uh, it's especially the additional scenarios that are kind of thrown out. Yeah, like let's keep going for now.
Get the character out for some reason, or you wanted them to be dead,
Oh,
so that
yeah, I was gonna say I do agree that just throwing out an insta death trap or something like that. Like, I don't really play D&D. The shows I run, the games I do, are much more narrative and role playing. So I don't run into these problems very often because usually there's a fair amount of cooperation in the narrative and in the even in encounters and stuff. I've done full encounters with no dice rolling, which I think a lot of players of D&D wouldn't like and stuff. But at the end of the day, I can 100% understand. Like, don't make, and unless it's something everyone wants and you talk about, like, don't randomly throw in a an insta death trap or anything like that. If you haven't talked to your players about it first, talk to them, see if they're interested, and if they are, that's great. And then you won't get a situation like with XP here, who had to just wander around. It's not fun, and I can understand that 100%.
they could like talk to somebody in the afterlife, which I think is really stupid anyways, but like there's very few reasons to do that, and that's insane. I don't want to read the rest of these. These are terrible, and I think this is a troll post. Don't rule your D&D games like that. Communication is the major functioning aspect to TTRPGs. It's why they're fun. It's why we play them in the first place. Communicate with your players and talk to them. If there's something that you're not vibing with, there's a way that you want to run the game. I guarantee you, if you talk to them and work it out, it'll happen. And then if they throw a hissy fit, then you know that they should not be at your table anymore, and that's bad. So anyways, have fun in your games.
I agree with that. The problem is it's undercut by the story or by the desire to go and like troll this guy and passive aggressively like torture him or bully him or again, I'll walk that back. That's a bit too hyperbolic, but essentially to satisfy the desire to go and have a go at him, basically in the game, like turn his rules against him. I can understand it, but if you want to have a serious talk and if you want to talk about communication and stuff, don't misrepresent like every single like section of this rule of these rules, and don't like don't like call them children, to call him a child, a toxic, and a villain, and all that kind of thing, and then just advocate for communication after you've. Yeah, the message there is good. Like, yes, do communicate, but yeah.
And
Finish the video.
I don't. Oh my God, this was. I hope that we can. We're trying to be more positive here on XP to level 3.
Okay. So. Yeah, and as I said, I can pull it up. Here I think it's here. Yeah, here it is. So, this is the original post 16 days ago. Apparently, it kind of blew up because I think it started off like very negative. People, I feel like I understand why your group went on hiatus. And then people saying like I checked out in the first line and everything, adversarial, and we haven't even started, stuff like that. Essentially, it seemed like people started with the take of fuck this guy and his rules, and then as more people like read it and more people kind of started to take the context of what was said, like the drugs and everything like that, it seems like people started to switch. There's even a comment on the video that I actually thought was really good. So I'll highlight it actually for the. There was someone here. Oh yeah, here we go. So it was this person here, Simon dash Xi7 LB. Thank you for this comment. I enjoyed reading it, and it's part of the reason I decided to throw out this video. I thought there was a lot of things worth talking about and so forth. So it's pretty obvious if you take context into consideration that the DM isn't the only problem here. I'm really disappointed that everyone just jumped the OP's side on this. I agree. When he's clearly being dishonest and disingenuous about the whole thing. Think about it. What do we know about the players just from context clues in this post? 1. They're consistently showing up super late to session and then leaving constantly to smoke weed and cigarettes. And yeah, like maybe even just, yeah, smoke weed as well, bongs and etc. 2. They're getting so drunk and high mid-session that the session has to end early. Maybe not early, but it might become untenable. We don't really get the... like, maybe later in the list it goes into sessions having to end early. I don't have full context, so I'll take what this person says as truth, because I haven't read all of the rules and everything. I'm not going to. It's not important for this video, but just as I read this out, go into the context of go in with the knowledge that I don't have everything here. So I'll take it as true, but I won't believe it wholesale. Like I'll take it with a pinch of salt, because we didn't see all of these. They're ordering food, not snacks, but full meals in the middle of the session and eating whenever they want to, getting food mess all over his stuff. Seems like a bit less of a problem, but if it's like to an extreme, it could be a big issue. Or it could be something that builds up over time, like, you know, more straws on the camel's back kind of thing. 4, they're simultaneously complaining that the DM isn't giving them hard enough boss fights, and that fights aren't fair when things don't go their way at the same time. Kind of, maybe a bit biased there towards the DM, but I can see it. Like, I think context allows for something along that line. 5, they're rolling dice before committing to actions and rolling their dice off the table so no one can see the result and they can lie about it, something I haven't seen anyone do since my freshman year of high school. Very possibly. They could be in high school as well, like later high school, like just before university, I guess. Like drinking and weed and everything could make sense for that. 6, they're whining that he doesn't do random encounters. The one thing any experienced DM will tell you is usually a terrible idea in the first place. Can't really speak on that. I do fairly random things like encounters. I don't really do encounters the same way though. So I don't know whether that's good or bad, but yeah. 7, they're ignoring Rule 0 and rules lawing the DM based on Reddit posts. I don't know about that one either. I assume there's a mention of Reddit posts later, but if they are doing that, eesh. 8, they're actively using guidance and divination spells to metagame. Again, not 100% sure about that, but maybe. 9, they're actively talking trash about the DM behind his back to each other instead of bringing up issues to him directly. And that goes into communication and things. And that's it, all ignoring the context of the rules. These weren't what he was already doing. These are his demands if they want him to come back to DM for them. Clearly, he's fed up and doesn't want to continue because he has the players from hell. Honestly, I can't blame him. I would never DM for a group like this, full stop. I will agree that I'd never DM for a group like this as the rules, context of the rules presents to us. No, punishing someone in-game for out-of-game behavior isn't a good idea, and a lot of these rules were written to be purposefully unreasonable from the get-go. So I can definitely see criticism there if he's actually serious about continuing the campaign. I highly doubt he is, though, from how angry his tone is throughout the entire post. This was a forever DM finally snapping after taking way too much abuse from disrespectful players, not a nightmare DM throwing temper tantrum over his party not respecting his terrible rulings. I will agree with the last bit about it not being a nightmare DM, probably. That seems likely. I'm also not sure it's a forever DM just finally snapping. It does seem that way, but there's no way to tell for sure. Like, maybe he's a bit too uptight. Maybe that they're all a bit too, like, lax and don't care, and it just kind of, like, exacerbates with a whole load of passive aggressiveness until it all explodes. Like, that seems like the most likely scenario, but there's no way to tell, so I'm not going to say definitively one way or the other. And yeah, essentially, just to sign off on this, or on everything here, like, the purpose of this isn't really to like shit on XP. Not directly, at least anyway. If people want to be like, wow, you're being really shitty to him or something, I can understand that. It's not the intention. And I will stick to what I said, which is I don't think, as I understand the video and as things have been presented, like, what I'm taking from it is that he's using the terrible 44 rules to kind of talk about communication and talk about DMing and how to be a good DM and what not to do and all these kind of things, which is something worthy. And a whole load of people watch this video. I just worry that it's perpetuating this kind of like fuck the DM or fuck the GM, when usually the problem is a mixture of lack of communication on all sides, including the players, and the inability to figure out what you want and to really like get all that locked down. And the main issue I have with it in general, like, I'm not going to levy any like solid criticism for like not translating the rules individually very well. I'll give a small amount for the presentation. A lot, like, I understand that you may have misunderstood like what the rules were kind of meant in context, but even the way you presented them. Sorry, I'm not going to speak as if I'm addressing him. He's not going to see the video. The rules that he was presenting were very insincere, were very unfair given the context, and it was very hyperbolic. It was like they were blown way out of proportion as to what was presented. Saying if you roll off the table or anything like that, and then claim that you got something, and then argue, then there will be consequences. To then say like, oh, what if I accidentally roll off the table? It's like, the reasons for being half a session late, and then assuming like, what if you were in traffic or any other like thing that could happen? It's like, no, within reason. So there needs to be a reason for it. That's very understandable. Especially if it, and with a lot of these, it seems to be taken in like an individual, like the, you know what? Let's hit this for a second because I think this is important. I think the context of the way he's presenting it is very individual instances. So it's like it happens on a one-off, and he loses his shit. This sounds a lot more like all of these things continually happening have frustrated him to the point where he's angry. And I think in that context, it makes a lot more sense to be stricter with the rules. No. It doesn't make more sense to be stricter with the rules. Basically, walk away from the table or communicate, do one of those two things, fix everything. However, why this was posted, why he presented this to his table, makes a lot more sense. Essentially be stricter with the rules because they're trying to get away with everything they can, and he doesn't like that. And they probably don't like him being more strict. He's probably being harsher to them as time goes on, and they're getting frustrated and acting out as well. So both sides are acting out. And like I said, the main reason was the end, the presentation of like this kind of fantasy of going there and like trolling him. Just to like, give him his just desserts, which I don't feel is really vindicated. And I feel it, like, the problem there is it just undercuts the entire rest of the video, which is trying to be more positive and trying to talk about, trying to talk about communication, and some there's some good points in there that I very much agree with. So yeah, that's the reason I did this video, and I wanted to be as fair as possible. I doubt anyone outside of a few of my viewers will even give it a look, but I wanted to throw that out there because it's, if anyone does find this, you may find some new perspectives that can help you as a DM, help you as a player, and maybe avoid some of the issues here, because we can see like even XP himself can like kind of lose his shit at stuff that frustrates him and everything, and like misrepresent the situation and everything. It's kind of a really good like learning curve. I will also say, with additional extra context for this, is like I don't know too much about the channel and the content. I remember seeing videos, and I've even watched quite a few, and I enjoyed the content. But it did tend to be like tips and tricks to DMing and stuff like that. So I'm kind of taking it on face value that he makes content around like GMing and DMing like tips and helping people to get better, or like the do's and don'ts and the pitfalls and stuff. So I wanted to I wanted to throw that context out there as well. Is that's essentially how I've like approached the video. If it is just, it doesn't feel like it at all. Like like it all feels quite serious, and it feels like he's taking it very seriously. But if it all just is like, you know, a joke or anything, and I guess the only other thing I could say is possibly because there's a sponsor in the video, possibly he just needed a reason to do a video and didn't really put that much effort or anything into it. I would say if that is the case, which is perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned, you know, if you just want to throw out a video, you pick something, you throw it out. Like, don't vilify a random DM and take it that seriously. If you want to make kind of a more jokey, like just kind of throwaway video, then yeah, don't vilify some poor dude who may be a bit of an asshole, maybe a more of an asshole, maybe everyone's an asshole, but I just don't think it's really I don't think it's really appropriate in this instance, and I didn't like it. So oh damn, almost 2 hours. That's way too long, considering his video is only 24 minutes. I talked way too much. Okay, I will finish things up with essentially something I'm going to be doing additional videos on this channel. A little bit of extra content. I have a fair few ideas of really weird and random, diverse things, all very different and all very like you know, ideas I have and stuff like that. But one of the things I want to do is throw out a few of my own like tips and tricks, and kind of like, it's not like this is what you must do, but it's more like these are my perspectives and they might help you. So the main perspective will always be communication and figure out what you all want. Sit down together, talk about what you're all interested in, talk about what you're all not interested in, figure out what type of game you're running, and you won't run into a lot of these problems. If this group had sat down and said, okay, we don't want to take this seriously, and the GM goes, I do want to take this seriously, then everyone goes, okay, well, then we need to figure out a way to make it work. But more likely they just say, well, let's just not do it. And then all of those problems are fixed. Possibly, you know, there may still be a few issues or something, but not to the degree that we found presented here. So, communication, figure out what you want, and you should be good. Yeah. Hopefully if you watched this video, you found it helpful, or you found some insight from it. But if not, just, you know, have a think about things. Yeah.